welcome to Mr. H on YouTube. Today we have another video, and this time we're going to be talking about Colonization Africa. So if you haven't already, go ahead and like and subscribe to Mr. H on YouTube for more social studies videos. Let's get right into it. Africa was one of the last continents to be colonized by Europeans. This wasn't really because of the Europeans not really knowing about Africa, or the European colonizers not really wanting Africa. Africa had a lot of resources that European colonizers wanted. What really led to it was geography. Africa's geography was really harsh compared to other colonial targets for the Europeans. This included non-navigable rivers, powerful tribal groups that resisted the Europeans, and most importantly, diseases that kept both Europeans sick and also their horses and other cattle from sick. So really, up until the Industrial Revolution, Africa really only had small, sparse colonies at the tip coast of South Africa. But of course, after the Industrial Revolution, the implementation of steam engines, the development of quinine medicine that allowed to cure malaria sickness. This allowed the Europeans to move deeper and deeper. The two primary colonizers of Africa were, of course, the United Kingdom and the French. However, there were other ones. Germany, Italy, Belgium, Spain, Portugal. All of them had colonial interests in Africa. Primarily, West Africa, including Algeria, was the French. Egypt, Sudan, modern day Uganda, that was primarily Britain, whereas the Germans had modern day Tanzania and Swaziland, things like that. When it came to the European division, really it came down to what we like to call gunboat diplomacy, where the Europeans with the most firepower really got to dictate who had the most colonies. And of course, France and Britain, being the two world powers at the time, they were the ones who were able to dictate what allowed for these colonies. Now, how did the Europeans colonize Africa? Well, it was really primarily the use of technology. Technology played a really key part to this. The Europeans had not just guns, but also steam engines. They had the ability to create railroads. The rapid expansion of European colonies really only begins during the Industrial Age. This also allowed them to exploit the resources that were in the African colonies. Railroads would go from mines and orchards and go directly to the coast, where steamships would take them back to Europe proper. The African colonies were really not set up to be, to not really be I guess one way you could say it is they weren't really set up for long-lasting use. They were more exploitative. They were for the resources. They didn't envision them as nations. One misconception we can sometimes have is that all Africans resisted the Europeans. This wasn't exactly true. Europeans utilized a lot of different African auxiliary units. Primarily, this was done through laborers, sometimes called porters. But there were also units of African troops who served under European officers. But also, the Europeans exploited tribal and kingdom rivalries, where they would promote friendly rulers who would rule through the Europeans. The Europeans really didn't have to have as much soldiers in the colony because they utilized the African ruler to rule over the colony as long as they did what the Europeans wanted. However, not all Africans meekly submitted to the Europeans. Resistance was heavy. Probably one of the most famous resistance was the Zulu War, where the Zulu nation fought against the British, eventually leading to the famous Battle of Rorke's Drift, where the British army of about 200 men fought off a 4,000-man Zulu army. This was just one of many tribal wars that were fought in all of the colonies. There was a history of attacks. It's important for us to understand that because a misconception also was seen that Africans just submitted to colonization. And really, this wasn't the case. The Africans resisted colonization throughout the period of colonialization in Africa. Now, let's just talk briefly about what was the purpose. The purpose of the colonies was primarily resources. Like I said before, African colonies were not set up with the idea that someday they would be nations. So this means there were no schools. There were very few hospitals. They didn't create a lot of infrastructure for the colony. The other problem is that they didn't really train local leaders to be administrative, mostly because the Europeans didn't trust them. So African colonies were not as developed as, say, the Latin American colonies in the earlier parts of imperialism. The other big purpose of colonies was pride. There's an old maxim from a British children's book that says basically they boast of having the most colonies. It was a source of pride when it comes to Europeans to have these colonies. And really, it came down to, it was almost like a game for the Europeans. Who can have the most? It's, I have the most colonies, you don't. And this is the situation that Africa was under primarily from the 1880s all the way up to the end of World War II in 1945, where they were subjected to European control. World War II will forever change that, which is what we'll talk about later this week when we talk about African decolonization. But one thing that we can take from this is that Africa was primarily colonized for both resources and prestige, and that it was a truly exploitative relationship between the colonizers and the colonized. But what do you think? What more do you want to know about the period of African colonization? Comment below with your own thoughts and questions. Don't forget to subscribe to Mr. H on YouTube if you haven't already done so, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!